Pen of 5. And also, the red coins in Gelato 6 were still pretty annoying. A few years would pass, and no any % runs would be completed. All Sunshine activity related to any % from late 2004 to 2008 would strictly be ILs, theory crafting in the Speed Demos archive or SDA forums, or glitch hunting. In early 2009, however, Theoradel decided it was finally time to put together a solid segmented run of the game, utilizing better movement and strategies to improve upon Dragorn's 159. On January 10th, 2009, Theoradel finished his segmented run with a 154.44 according to SDA timing, an astounding 5-minute improvement. It's important to note SDA timing because it's actually significantly different than the timing method used today. You see, SDA does their timing from first input as opposed to console reset or file select, so the timing would actually start on the first Peach text box. If I were to convert Dragorn's and Theoradel's runs to modern day timing, it would be 2 hours and 55 seconds and 155.50 respectively. So anyway, Theoradel mainly improved the time by being much more liberal with water sliding. There still weren't really any established strategies to traverse the floodless stages or defeat Shadow Marios quickly, but there still were a lot of improvements throughout the run nonetheless. At the time, this run seemed pretty darn solid, but there was still a lot of things preventing Mario Sunshine from being considered a highly respected speed game. For example, the eel boss fight felt like kind of a crapshoot, the casino was a randomness nightmare, and there were just so many goddamn cutscenes. Would people ever get around these kind of issues in years to come? The time period that followed this could be seen as an era of discovering things. No one was really doing any runs of the game, at least not outside of Japan, but I'll touch upon that in a bit. Instead, during the period from 2009 to early 2011, a lot of important skips and tricks were found that would shave off significant time, the first of which being the Pen of 1 cutscene skips discovered by a Japanese player named Tateo. In July 2010, he discovered that you could skip both Mecha Bowser cutscenes by simply exiting area as you were transitioning into the cutscene. The reason this works is that time still progresses in the game during the fade out of exiting an area, and if a Mecha Bowser cutscene is triggered during this fade out, the game gets confused and the result is a cutscene skip. This saves about 3 minutes overall. Unfortunately, when applying this method to any other cutscene transition in the game, exiting area simply brings you back to the title screen. The next major breakthrough, discovered by Axon in October 2010, was Yoshi Skip in Pianta Village Episode 5. Normally, you're supposed to unlock Yoshi before being able to complete all of Pianta Village, due to the entry of the secret stage being blocked by jelly that only Yoshi can clear out. This meant that originally the 80% route forced you to complete Pinna Park before going to Pianta Village, in order to fulfill the requirement of unlocking Yoshi, completing Episode 4 of Pinna Park. However, when Yoshi Skip came around, this opened up routing possibilities that completed Pianta Village much earlier in the run. On top of this, the time saved from not having to use Yoshi to enter the secret is around 25 seconds. So it's no secret that the casino in Serena Beach Episode 4 is extremely annoying. There are 2 spinning slot machines to deal with, on top of a finicky tile flipping puzzle that opens up the way to the secret entrance. Thanks to a discovery from Mano Cheese in February 2011, all of the random elements of the casino can be skipped by simply gaining enough height to climb over the top of the curtains. Without this skip being possible, Serena Beach would have undoubtedly been the most annoying world in an 80% run. Other smaller skips were also found during this period, such as Mole Skip in Pinna Park Episode 2, a banana clip in Serena Beach Episode 3, some major abuse of invincibility frames to skip a large portion of Pianta Village Episode 3, and a spring clip to skip the boss fight in Oki Bay Episode 2. But who would be first to put all these skips and tricks together into a full game, single segment run? Well, the answer isn't entirely clear, but let's dive right into it. So you know how I mentioned Japan earlier? It turns out that the Japanese were the original pioneers of what could be considered the modern era of SMS speedrunning. There were 2 dominant 80% runners that emerged from this region, Tobo and Chibi, who later changed his name to Sine Cosine, and I will be referring to him as such for the remainder of this video, just so that everyone knows that I'm not referring to... yeah, you get the idea. Both Tobo and Sine Cosine began learning SMS speedrunning in 2010, and both strived for a run that was out of this world, to a degree much higher than any Western runner could even hope to achieve. The first notable modern 80% record using all the previously mentioned skips was 134.50 by Tobo in October of 2011. Unfortunately, the history of world records between Theoradel's 155 and Tobo's 134 has not been documented. It can safely be assumed that the Japanese players were single-handedly developing the 80% meta over the course of 2010 to early 2011, using skips that both Western and Japanese speedrunners had discovered during this period. Considering how low the standards of consistency were at this time, this run was nothing short of impressive. Interestingly, the route at this time opted to complete Pianta Village at the very start of the game. It was probably known this wasn't the most optimal route, but this was likely used as a way to get Yoshi Skip out of the way as soon as possible. Yoshi Skip was a major run killer when it wasn't very well understood, and Sidestep was the only known method. This was the first instance of modern eel strats being used. The eel fight in Noki Bay Episode 4 was extremely hard to do consistently fast before any strats were developed, but Tobo manages to pull off a 4-tooth eel, meaning that he cleaned off the 4 middle teeth before provoking the eel into eating him, and thus manipulating him to not go back into his hidey hole and waste a buttload of time. He also successfully pulled off the cutscene skip, which occurs as long as you're flashing red from taking damage at the same time that you spray off the final tooth.
8秒の更新8秒更新しました。おめでとうございます。
In a couple of months, Sine Cosine would fire back with an 80% speedrun that would set the bar extremely high. In December of 2011, Sine Cosine achieved a time of 1:33:01. This run was mind-blowing, to say the least. Such insane levels of consistency and execution had never before been seen in SMS. As a bit of an aside, I remember before I got into speedrunning SMS myself, as soon as I saw those windmill wall kicks, I knew this guy didn't mess around. Due to the nature of how Nico Live, a Japanese streaming website, handles broadcasting, both Tobo and Sine Cosine used a timing method that was acceptable at the time, later frowned upon, and then eventually deemed unacceptable on modern leaderboards. It wasn't segmented nor RTA, but they used what's known as time attack, or TA. A time attack run is a single segment speedrun that allows the runner to pause the game and the timer, and the runner can then resume the game and timer at any point that they choose. The reason this was convenient for Japanese speedrunners is that Nico Live forces the broadcast to segment at 30-minute intervals. Because of this, Japanese SMS speedrunners would complete 20 to 25 minutes of gameplay, and at a given text box, pause the game and timer, and then segment the stream. While this did solve the issue of Nico's broadcasting system, there was a clear advantage to doing this versus doing an actual RTA. It wouldn't be until the latter half of 2012 that new world record runs would arise, as Sine Cosine's 1:33:01 was just that good for the time. Tobo got the record back on August 17th, 2012.
ラストここ。よっしゃこれ。これはもろた。これはもろた。しゃー。やったー。やったー。これは嬉しい。これは嬉しい。
The route used in this run was new, as Bianco Hills was completed first again, and Rico Harbor was done really early in the route, right when it's unlocked. He also utilized advanced ship movement in Pinna Park Episode 5, which has an extremely tight window to hover to the boat, side flip to the sail, and then spin jump to the catwalk. Sine Cosine then got a time of 1:32:31 on October 7, 2012, but unfortunately he either unlisted or removed the video from his YouTube channel. Tobo proceeded to tie this time on November 8th. Later in the month, on November 22nd, Tobo improved the record by 24 seconds, getting a 1:32:07. A notable strat used in this run was an improvement to a previously known banana clip in Serena Beach Episode 3. In May of 2012, your boy Graham discovered what would come to be known as the banana split. By backflipping into the glass wall and timing a throw, this served as a much faster method of clipping into the pool room. Amongst any healthy competition of a speed game rising in popularity, some shady business is almost guaranteed to occur. In 2012, Racing on Speedruns Live, or SRL, was becoming very popular, and racing SMS 80% was no exception. Racing was all in good fun and wasn't taken too seriously or observed with much scrutiny. That is, until one such race would change this forever, as it would cause figureheads of SMS to begin to crack down on those who don't provide adequate proof of a race they participated in. There is a cycle that was considered to be the stuff of legends at this stage in Sunshine's development. The chance that any of these chucksters decide to stop, as well as the amount of time that they're stopped for, is entirely random. Ideally, the chucksters early on are mostly on a fast cycle with little to no stopping time, and the very last chuckster is on a slow cycle, having to stop a lot and for an extended period of time. If the last chuckster is slow enough that he's in this corner when you get to this section of the level, it makes a cycle that saves a minimum of 20 seconds possible. Before it was known that you could mash the Y button to reverse a chuckster throw, the chance of making this cycle was deemed to be nearly impossible in an RTA. This very cycle plays a pivotal role on this scandal. On December 14th, 2012, this any% race took place. Now, you'll notice amongst these results that there was a runner by the name of Ramel123456 who got disqualified. Well, to put it simply, Ramel spliced a mid-131 run for a race, and streamed the video playback as his race proof. He didn't do this just out of nowhere, however. He had consistently good race times leading up to this moment, which were also most likely faked just to make his supposed world record race time seem more realistic. The early chuckster cycle that I previously mentioned went on to be known as the Ramel cycle, as he made this cycle in his spliced run. The SMS community quickly found out that his time was faked when his stream temporarily went down and then back up as he was being asked during the credits to do a specific movement on the file select screen as a sort of proof call. Funnily enough, Ramel, who later streamed under the name Inomine, would go on to legitimately get a 131 and a top 3 time at that, but it was never allowed on leaderboards or acknowledged by anyone due to his previous splicing incident. From here, Tobo went on sort of a tear, while Sine Cosine couldn't quite keep up. Tobo improved his own record a few times, managing to get a 131.58 on December 29, 2012, barely achieving a 131 before 2013. He then got a 131.38 on February 15, 2013. And keep in mind that all the records up to this point have been either segmented or done with the TA method of timing. It seemed like Tobo was such a dominant force, but it was only a matter of time before another runner would rise up to the challenge. That's where Samurai Man comes in. Samurai Man, a speedrunner from Finland, began seriously running SMS in the summer of 2012, and he improved fast. Like, really, really fast.
Well, GG. That was the run, guys. Oh my god. I did it. 132. 132.
Samu is basically the kind of person who can get really good at any game he puts his mind to. Coming into 2013, Samu was definitely a top runner, but didn't seem like he was nearly in contention with Tobo yet. But on one fateful February 28th, that changed.
Yes.
Samu managed to clutch out a PB by a minute. This was also the first time in history that the any% record was done RTA as opposed to TA, which meant that it was done in one sitting without ever pausing the timer. This record may have only been by 11 seconds, but there is no doubt that it left a huge impact on SMS speedrunning as a whole. He truly proved that you don't have to be Japanese to be the best at Sunshine. Tobo would quickly return to the any% grind, and he took the record back by 3 seconds just a couple weeks later, once again using the TA timing method. He then beat his own 131.24 by 1 second exactly a month later. But the important thing about this run was that it was the first time Tobo managed to get the record using RTA. No video footage currently exists for either of these two times, but the 131.23 stood for a while, considering that Samu's former record was extremely good for his own standards, and he would need to practice and improve his skills before once again taking the record. Small movement optimizations were being developed, but no new strats were really found during this time period. After a couple months of grinding, Samu managed to drop the record down by another 15 seconds.
Oh yeah! Yes! There we go. A new world record. A new world record.
I personally saw this run live, and while it sounds cliche, it was definitely one of the best examples I've ever seen of how you should never give up. Samu pulled this run off immediately after losing 2 PB pace runs in a row to Nokibe episode 6.
Yes! Oh! You can't be serious! What? No.
Not only is the shell secret considered to be the hardest secret in the game, but it's also at the very end of the run, so it can definitely create a huge mental barrier. By this point, there was something on everyone's mind, as the times seemed to be approaching a certain special goal.
I'm going to prove that sub 130 is possible, Kappa.
Sub 130 would be the ultimate crowning achievement of SMS any percent, but it would just barely be possible with the knowledge at the time. Within less than a month, Tobo managed to get the first ever 130 time with a 130.45 on August 17th, 2013. There really weren't any significant discoveries in the game for the majority of 2013, just a ton of grinding runs or races, and a community expanding at an alarming rate. The rivalry between Japan and Europe, Tobo and Samu, was raging on, and other runners were sneaking up in the background. Yamata, Stelzig, and Pyroshade. Each representing a different country. Samurai Man later achieved a 130.49. Though not world record, it showed that he was more than capable of it. Samu would pull in over 1,000 viewers every time he streamed attempts, as viewers eagerly anticipated the low 130, if not sub 130 any percent time. Well, on September 3rd, 2013, this happened.
Well, that's the new world record.
This went down as one of the most legendary speedruns of SMS in history. Samurai Man accomplished this run with essentially the same knowledge that was around for months, just with insanely consistent gameplay and fairly solid luck throughout. But how much did luck, or uncontrollable factors within the game, play a role? The variance in PD patterns in Bianca Hill's episode 5 can realistically cost over 40 seconds, even up to a minute over the optimal pattern. The plungellos on the mirrors in Gelato Beach episode 2 have AI that causes them to walk around randomly until they spot you. With bad enough patterns on the double and triple plungello mirrors, it wasn't uncommon to lose upwards of 20 seconds. There's the previously mentioned Ramel cycle that generally cost over 25 seconds if you don't make it, and keep in mind that with less polished movement, Ramel cycle happened around 1 in 10 times assuming you played perfectly. The Manta Ray fight in Serena Beach episode 1, which was barely explored, was essentially random and could cost you a ton of time. And finally King Boo, who can randomly give you extra cycles costing around 7 seconds each. Top level runners would almost need to get good enough luck overall, otherwise they would have to play out of their mind in order to compensate for bad luck. Amidst the race for sub 130, quite a number of strats were being developed towards the end of 2013 that would definitely help. Tobo himself discovered 2 strats within Piazza Village episode 4. He found that it was faster to keep holding the chain and pushing the chain chomp forward, as well as manipulating the chain chomp to go into the pool area and with a well-timed grab make him fall in. 5-tooth eel was increasingly becoming the norm, better strategies for secret stages were coming out, and overall, people began really analyzing for more subtle movements of SMS to see where frames could be saved. Samurai Man and Tobo were still grinding runs almost every day, but the grind was nearly beginning to feel exhaustive for both runners and viewers alike. Awesome Games Done Quick 2014 came around, and as always with these large marathons, much of the attention within the speedrunning community shifts away from the usual streamers grinding runs to supporting or even attending the event itself. Well, it just so happened that a couple days into this marathon, while everyone was focused on the event and least expected it, this is what transpired in Japan.
やっぱ来た。あーもうやっと来た。やっぱ来たマジで。うわーマジやった。あーやっぱ来た。やっぱ来たここ。あーやったマジで。やった。
On January 6th, 2014, Tobo proved that sub 130 is possible with his run of 129.50. A run that achieved the SMS community's dream time, and better yet, didn't even have Ramel cycle. This started to lead to a hive mind belief of the inevitable fate of Mario Sunshine. It felt as though there was nothing else to really explore with the category, with the exception of a little known cutscene skip discovered way back in October 2012 by the famous Japanese SM64 runner, Honey. Honey skip is a trick in which you clip into this building, and if you manage to die on the same exact frame you enter the cutscene trigger for Pinna Park, it will skip the cutscene. The reason that you die is that there's a death plane in most of the out of bounds areas that will kill you if you're touching the ground for the duration of 1 second. Even though Honey Skip was kinda known to be possible for over a year, there were no reliable setups yet created for it. People thought that the setup would be too slow for it to be worth it anyway, and you can really see why if you knew that the original setup involved some janky Y-cam return alignment. Top level competition seemed to die down, and with the exception of SRL races, motivation for running any percent was somewhat declining. Tobo's magnum opus, the sub 130 run, would mark the end of an era. So there's something I've been kinda brushing over for this entire video thus far. Gelato Beach. Gelato Beach in an any percent run sucks. Gelato 1 is okay, you know, the secret of the sandcastle or whatever. Sure, I'll give you that. Episode 2 sucks. Episode 3 is more or less an auto-scroller. Episode 4 is more or less an auto-scroller. Episode 5 is more or less an auto-scroller. Episode 6 sucks. And Episode 7 is Shadow Mario. There is an interesting aspect to Gelato Beach, however, that doesn't apply to any other world in the game. The Episode 8 Shine, the Watermelon Festival, exists in every episode of the world. Since the beginning of SMS speedruns, people would occasionally theory craft ways to clip into the glass and collect the shine in Episode 1.
Gelato Beach skip? Oh my god.
Thus unlocking all the episodes immediately, making Episode 7 available. People already knew that the shine was in fact a physical shine, because an alternate method of Gelato Beach skip was already known. Exclusive to the Japanese version of SMS, you can use Yoshi in Episode 6 to clip through the ceiling and dive ground pounds into the shine. People using NTSCJ had a slight advantage because of being able to avoid Gelato 6 in any percent, but it really didn't save that much time since you still ended up doing the same number of shines. Obviously, years went by with no success in finding the skip, and it seemed as though it was hopeless. Then one day, along comes the Spyro speedrunner. That's right, the long sought after Gelato Beach skip, or GBS, was found on February 21st, 2014 by Tobal1, who doesn't even run SMS. This just goes to show that sometimes, having a fresh pair of eyes is exactly what you need to solve a problem. And if he or she is already a talented glitch hunter, that also helps. While this may seem like an obvious solution, the reason it took so long to find was due to how precise the setup is. Not only does the angle require you to grab a straight edge and align the camera forward, but you must align the camera from this direction rather than this direction, otherwise it still won't work. The discovery of the skip quickly went viral, and SMS runners were absolutely ecstatic. Not only would this save over 10 minutes in any percent, but it skipped what was widely agreed to be the most boring world in SMS. The race was on as a mad dash to get some free world records ensued. After gaining enough understanding of the skip to at least get it within 10 attempts or so, Samurai Man started doing runs as soon as possible. The first run that Samu completed using the skip resulted in a 1:24:24, a 5.5 minute improvement using a skip that saves 10 minutes. Obviously, there was a lot more work to be done. I previously mentioned that the United States was the weakest region by a considerable amount. But that wouldn't stop Paperario1231, as he fully capitalized on this moment for the US to finally hold a world record in any percent.
Lido!
What the hell?
What was... Huh? Screw it. If I don't get a 1-2-1-1-1-2... Yeah, I'm not gonna get it. I don't even fucking care. I don't even fucking care! I did it! I don't know what to do! 5.1! Ah!
Okay.
Nice job, Paper.
Ah!
What's your final time? What's your final time?
World record for an hour until Tabo gets it.
What?
Paper managed to sneak in a record for America, and a 122 at that. And as expected, a mere 20 hours later, Samurai Man got a time of 122.35. An improvement, yes, but still not even close to meeting his full potential. Tobo quickly got a run of 121.45, but of course, this still wasn't good enough to be worth highlighting. Within a couple of hours, Samu not only achieved a 120.36, but then a 120.32 immediately after that.
BP.
All on February 22nd. The original GBS setup, which lasted for all of one day, involved using 2 coconuts, one to disable the hitbox of the blender, and the other to do the skip. As you can see, by this point, the 1 coconut method already became the standard. The very next day, Tobo managed to get a 120.08. So within just a couple of days of GBS being found, the record had almost been dropped down to a sub 120 time. Samu and Tobo were the only runners who could realistically get a sub 120 at this point, so it was only a matter of who'd be first to get it. Well, 1 month later, Tobo finally got the first sub 120 in SMS any percent, but he didn't just get it by a little bit. His time was actually a 119.34, completely smashing his previous record by over 30 seconds. This run was an extremely solid run with the strats that were known at the time, plus the addition of GBS. A great surge of popularity for running SMS came directly from the discovery of GBS, so it makes it all the more insane that the 119.34 stood for over 5 months without being contested. This is perhaps when Tobo, already being a dominant player, was at his most dominant. A few weeks prior to performing this legendary run, Tobo delivered this tweet that states, "Tobo the WR hug," and at the time, this tweet really couldn't have been more true. Shortly after this record, Samurai Man decided to take a brief break from playing SMS, and the other top runners would need to seriously grind if they could even hope to get the world record. Over the upcoming summer months, several runners were improving their skills and closing the gap between themselves and the world record. Previously, I mentioned how Honey Skip was considered to not be viable for any percent speedruns, but Stelzig went on to develop the first reasonable setup for a run. By aligning Mario's forward position to where his shadow is first visible, standing in a specific spot, and ground pounding at the very end of a neutral hover, you can buffer a diagonal sidestep into the cutscene trigger and hopefully die on the exact same frame that you enter it. Stelzig, a competitive melee player and SMS speedrunner from Denmark, had a plan to eventually defeat Tobo with the help of his Honey Skip setup, which saved roughly 10 to 12 seconds if performed quickly. Stelzig kept grinding away at Sunshine over the summer of 2014, and was excelling in various categories. When it started to dawn on him that he had the potential to take the most prestigious record in SMS, he shifted his focus entirely to any percent toward the end of July.
120.01.
Stelzig would sometimes like to grind offline attempts so that he could watch videos or streams during runs to take his mind off the pressure. On August 1st, Stelzig uploaded an extremely heartbreaking video that showcases an offline world record pace run that died on the Bowser fight. Unfortunately for Stelzig, he just couldn't quite handle the pressure. Chokes of this magnitude can psychologically be tough to overcome. As the month of August went on, Stelzig couldn't even manage to get a 119, let alone world record, despite proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he could do it.
What?
Well, there is a good ending to this story, as Stelzig's hard work did pay off. He achieved a world record time of 119.24 on August 25th. He finally overcame his mental block, and for the first time since late 2012, someone other than Samurai Man and Tobo, and Paper Mario, held the any percent record. About a week before Stelzig took the record, Samurai Man started doing some SMS any percent runs just to see how he would do, but wasn't entirely sure if he would come back to serious grinding or not. He actually managed to get a 119.36, just 2 seconds off Tobo's former record, 4 days before Stelzig's 119.24.
Well, damn.
In the latter half of 2013, Samurai Man and Stelzig became European rivals over the 120 shines record, which is essentially the 100% category for SMS. Viewers were excited to see these two trade the record back and forth, using many Zig Frogs or Samu Kappa-Rise to show their support. This rivalry transferred over to any percent when Stelzig fully established himself as a threat with his world record time. autumn of 2014 came around, and Samurai Man was hard set on going for not just world record, but the first ever 118. After about a month of grinding, Samu finally bested Stelzig's time by about 4 seconds.
Oh my god.
Samu still didn't use Honey Skip at this point, so he even had a 10-second deficit to account for. So guess what happened just as Samu had begun to take in the excitement of once again being number 1? That's right, Tobo had been grinding any percent attempts this whole time, but coincidentally, he achieved a 119.08 merely a day after Samu got world record. Not only was this a large improvement to the record, but in addition to not using Honey Skip, this run also didn't have Rommel Cycle. Tobo's record was truly daunting, as some of the strategies that were used seemed so crazy. This would mark the beginning of the journey to 118 for all the top runners. Many American SMS speedrunners were racing any percent regularly, sometimes on a nightly basis over the next dozen months or so following the discovery of GBS. When racing was extremely popular, there was no denying that the US had a lot of solid players, but no one was really a world record contender. As fate would have it, one particular American was on track to break this mold. I will just let the following clip introduce him.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
This is Cathalon, a speedrunner from Utah. He began running SMS during the latter half of 2013, but the incredibly active community that arose during 2014 is what really motivated him to become a top-tier player. Cathalon was very serious about the grind, and was building up consistency quickly. He would often win any percent races amongst the other high-level SMS runners, and this video from Q_QQQ2 proves it. Everyone knew that 118 was realistic after Tobo's 119.08 happened, and Cathalon was dead set on being the first one to achieve it.
Fast boat hype always gets a fast boat in this run. Third place!
2014 was coming to an end, and it seemed that one of the top runners was destined to get the first 118 any day now. While on January 14th, 2015, Cathalon, but more importantly the USA, would leave its mark in SMS history.
Yeah! Yes! 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 Do it! I got 118!
Cathalon was the first American to put in the work to get a solid world record time. This run was truly inspiring, especially for the Americans within the SMS community.
Zach, you did it!
Dude, world record hug, dude.
World record hug! Oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
This was an incredible way to start off 2015, and the competition would only get crazier from here. Another Japanese player that I've mentioned a couple of times earlier in this video, Yamata, was a top 5 player for a remarkably long time leading up to this point. Yamata is known mostly for his skill in the 120 shines category, but of course, that skill can also translate to any percent. Yamata ended up tying Caf's world record on February 7th. This is somewhat of a trend with Tobo, but the next day, Tobo took the record back by 4 seconds. Then later in the month, on February 23rd, he got a 1:18:35. Tobo was back on top, but he wasn't yet satisfied with his record. At this point, you might be wondering why even some non-Japanese runners like Kafalon are using the Japanese or NTSCJ version of the game. Well, there are some minor version differences when it comes to the 80% category. NTSCJ saves roughly a third of a second every time Delfino Plaza loads, and this adds up over the course of a run. However, NTSCJ loses nearly 10 seconds on Serena Beach Episode 6 due to a much stricter goop cleaning requirement. The PAL version, which is native to most other countries outside of North America and Japan, has the fastest text speed when using Italian text. That being said, the Delfino load times on the Japanese version are still the biggest factor. At this point in Sunshine's development, NTSCJ saved roughly 12 seconds over NTSCU, and even less than that over PAL. So overall, the version differences are extremely minor, but most people still found it necessary to play an NTSCJ to save every little bit of time that they could. Kafalon didn't give up, as he pushed the record down another 6 seconds on April 2nd.
Can I put this call on stream for now?
World record! World record! World record!
This was a solid run overall with very few notable mistakes. In a matter of less than 4 months, the record was pushed down to sub 1:18:30 since the first sub 1:19. At this point, 80% was really starting to feel like it was becoming optimized. So let's introduce Average Trey, aka me. I come from the state of Kansas, and at this point I was 19 years old. I was known for being the 120 shines guy, having held world record in that category extensively, and running 120 shines at AGDQ 2015. However, I knew that if I put in the effort, I could potentially get a sick 80% time, and maybe even world record. Throughout the month of May 2015, I challenged myself to grind nothing except for SMS 80% until I either got a 117 or the month of May was over. Just to make things a little more special, I also decided to use Facecam and called this month the May of Trey's Face. Going into this month, I was over a minute behind Cap's world record, but I was confident in myself to improve. It's important to note that this is the point where the timing standard in the West officially changed to what we currently use today, file select timing. This method starts the timer on selecting start on the file select screen rather than soft resetting the console, and saves around 7 seconds. Japan, preferring to stick to tradition, still uses reset timing to this day, so all Japanese players' times get converted as a result. Had file select timing always been the standard, then that would have meant that Samurai Man was in fact the first person to get sub 130. Anyways, I present to you the results of the May of Trey's Face. With only a few days to spare in the month of May, I not only achieved the 80% record, but this was the first time that anyone has simultaneously held the record in the 4 main categories at the same time.
4 out of 4, US Trey.
2015 was, without a doubt, my strongest year in speedrunning, and it was super exciting to achieve a time that I was constantly doubting that I'd ever reach.
Dude, I shreked the calf. For now. But he'll be back. Alright, he'll be back.
And oh, how right I was. Because only a couple weeks later, Kafalon improved the record to a 1:18:17.
I actually didn't, I thought this was, shitty chrono of all time.
Kaf was on the grind for 1:17 at this point, since that seemed to be the peak time that SMS 80% would ever reach. On June 28th, Kafalon was on the run of his life. Things were looking good leading into Noki Bay, but in the very last episode before Corona Mountain, things took a turn for the worse.
I'm sorry.
This run could have been 1:17, but Kafalon choked the Shadow Mario quick kill, costing him about 12 seconds. This was definitely the most depressing world record in SMS history, and something that Kafalon will probably never live down.
The shittiest run ever. Thanks for watching. people.
So you may be thinking, well, yeah, that's sad and everything, but there's nothing stopping Cathlon from just grinding more attempts and finally achieving the legendary 117. Well, that would be true, except at this point, a revolutionary discovery for any percent was in the works. A majority of the group of SMS runners known as the Good People were responsible for putting the pieces together and making a certain skip in Pinna Park possible. Dan Salvato, famously known for his work in modding Super Smash Bros. Melee, created a practice codes hack for SMS. Using USB or SD card loading, one could load the game with these codes and use them to reload stages instantly by holding a certain combination of buttons and exiting area. These codes were extremely useful for making practice more efficient, cutting out the wait time of exiting and re-entering a level. Another feature includes position codes, which allows the player to save himself at a specific location using the left D-pad, and then using the right D-pad warp to this point from anywhere in the level. On July 12th, Sided Williams asked Clayton SMS to test something using practice codes in Pinna Park. He wanted him to position code himself in the loading zone for the Pinna 6 secret, and then in a mission other than episode 6, get an orange Yoshi outside the park and use the position code to test if the loading zone was still there. Well, it turns out that it is there. So if there was just some way to get to the Yoshi go-round inside the unloaded park section using Yoshi from the beach section, there would be potential for a major skip. It had already been known for years that you can clip into this door in the beach missions of Pinna Park. The problem is, as I mentioned previously, the park is unloaded. This staircase is surrounded by invisible walls that Mario can oddly stick to by holding the control stick towards it. And if Mario sidesteps into the wall, he zips to the bottom of the map and dies instantly. Pyroshade discovered that platforms created from spraying an enemy with Yoshi's juice could pass through these invisible walls into the unloaded park. It would have to be a platform created by a purple Yoshi, as pink platforms only raise up vertically and orange platforms are stationary. It soon dawned on Cathlon that in Pinna Park Episode 2, there are bullet bills that get shot at you in series of 3, and these bullet bills will even shoot into the unloaded park if you're standing in this area. Cathlon then realized that by standing on horizontally moving Yoshi platforms that are able to pass through invisible walls, Mario can actually stand on the platform and be unaffected by the unloaded park. And it was at this point, people knew that this skip could actually become a reality. So here is how the skip should work in theory. First, you would unlock Yoshi by completing episode 4 of Pinna Park, then go to episode 2 to perform the skip. You would eat a durian in order to turn Yoshi purple so he can create platforms that move horizontally. Then, you would use a glitch known as fruit storage to store a fruit that turns Yoshi orange. In order to do fruit storage, simply grab a fruit with Yoshi's tongue and dismount Yoshi before he actually eats the fruit. This allows you to eat the fruit from any point in the level that you'd like. After storing a fruit, use another fruit to clip into this door. The standard black bullet bills will never give you the proper angle to reach the Yoshi go-round, but there are special purple bullet bills that can spawn randomly, which have homing properties. You would create a setup that allows the bullet bill to face a certain window of angles, spray it at the correct time, then ride the platform through the unloaded park. At any point during this ride, you would eat the orange fruit that you stored so that you can access the loading zone, and bam, you've effectively skipped the entirety of Pinna Park Episode 5. The first person to actually pull this skip off on console was Kenny Cola. So there you have it, you can now access Corona Mountain with 43 shines instead of 44. It goes by a variety of names, but it's most formally referred to as Early Yoshi Go Round, or EYG. If this skip is done optimally and with first cycle purple bill, it could save up to a minute. But here's the thing. People thought this skip would only be possible on the NTSC-U and PAL versions of the game, as NTSC-J doesn't have fruit storage. But a day later, Jared's Giants discovered that if you set the fruit that you used to clip through the door in just the right spot, Yoshi could eat the fruit through the door. Not only did this save time since you could use one fewer fruit in the setup, but it made this skip possible on every version of the game. The first world record completed using this new skip was also the first 117 ever. Yamata got a 117.58 on July 16th, 2015. There was obviously room for improvement considering how much time this skip should save. Later that same day, Cathlon got a 117.55, making his quest for 117 bittersweet, as he never quite managed to get it without any major skip. The biggest problem with EYG was readily apparent: the luck factor. It could literally take over 10 cycles before any purple bill showed up in some cases, as you're never guaranteed to get any purples on any given cycle. This skip adding yet another major element of luck to the run was extremely troublesome, as it would mean that the chances of an amazing run coming together was even lower than before. Whenever a major skip is found, it's almost destined that a new up-and-coming runner would capitalize on it and rise to the top. Nindide, a fairly experienced speedrunner at this time, had been running SMS for about a year at this point. He was notorious for always going for the most ridiculous strats possible possible for his skill level, and would often pay the price for it. But the thing is, despite all the resets and ridicule he received, this turned out to be a brilliant strategy for reasons that I'll get to later. On July 24th, Nindide left his first impact on SMS any percent world record history, getting a 117.50. Dide actually skipped 118, which is nothing short of insanity. No one could have seen this coming. This dude, who streams with compressed splits and doesn't even record his game audio, just came out of nowhere and swept up the any percent record. And people wondered, why is there no sound? Well, the answer is, because there is none. A couple weeks passed with no new records, which is surprising considering there was so much time that could be saved. EYG was just so difficult and random that it was hard to clutch out a world record run. I took the record back on August 11th by finally getting a decent run with EYG.
Didn't get cooped. World record!
USA.
Nepal. Nepal is back.
Nepal! Nepal!
If you compare my bullet bill setup to setups in previous records, you'll notice a pretty major difference. I was actually using the high bill setup, which is considerably worse than the low bill setup. The reason I was still using it is that I was, stubborn, simply put. Just don't be like me, okay? If you're gonna do EYG in episode 2, do yourself a favor and use the low bill setup. A couple weeks later, Yamata improved the record by a second, so the time was slowly getting whittled down to where it should be. People were just losing so many runs to bad luck on EYG, which made any percent more brutal than it ever was before. On September 4th of 2015, I was on the run of my life, and then this happened.
Really? Is that gonna be the death of the one cycle? Oh shit! No ledge grab?
Despite choking what could have been a solid run for the time, I still ended up getting a new record of 117.32.
World recce! With the worst late game of all time. God damn it.
I was pretty disappointed to say the least, knowing what this run could have been. Well, wouldn't you know it, Tobo once again took his throne back, getting a 117.25. It's truly amazing how Tobo had been around for 5 years at this point, and was still able to break the record every now and then. Tobo had this strange sense of pride regarding his times, however. Being that he is Japanese, he stuck with reset timing along with the other Japanese runners. So to him, his 117.25 was actually 117.32, which only tied my record. He wanted a time good enough to beat the record by at least 7 seconds. Because of this, he still didn't feel it was necessary to highlight his run, and kept on grinding to improve the record further. It wouldn't be a true SMS history video without mentioning a Japanese player named Zelpiku Kirby. He is undoubtedly the best TASer of Sunshine, making an any percent tool-assisted speedrun of 109.10 back in April 2014. On October 22nd, Zelpiku discovered what would come to be known as rocket storage. You can cancel the blast off of a charged rocket nozzle with the landing animation from a jump, and then sidestep off a ledge to use the stored rocket. The height gained from this is even higher than a regular rocket, and furthermore, you can charge a rocket during the ascent to gain some additional height.
Wow, that was quite a run. They're cheering for me. They're cheering for my sub 140.
Bouncy Boy started running Mario Sunshine in the summer of 2014, and over the first year of his streaming career, he would stream practice and attempts of SMS daily with few exceptions. B-Boy improved extremely fast due to not only the amount of time he put into practice, but the effectiveness of his practice. He was a major proponent of individual world runs. IWs are useful for practicing consistency that individual level practice alone can't exactly provide. At the advent of EYG, he was already a top 10 player, and the new skip further motivated him to push the brink of what he knew he could accomplish in SMS. And on Halloween, with the usage of rocket storage in Corona Mountain, B-Boy made history.
Oh my god!
But he wouldn't stop there.
Yes! Yo,
We did it. That was like the easiest PB of my life.
Finally, a time had been achieved that's over a minute ahead of the record before EYG was discovered. But this only raised the question, how soon would 116 happen? Surely a time of such magnitude would create a mental block for months to come, right? Nope. So there you have it. Bouncy Boy established himself as the best runner of SMS Any Percent at the end of 2015.
Oh my god! We did it! Holy shit.
B-Boy amassed an impressive following on Twitch, thanks in large part to his passionate dedication to SMS Any Percent. The 116.49 lasted for a significant amount of time, as it wasn't until the latter half of February that it would finally be beaten. Tobo was truly a machine. It's rare that such an old school player of any game can hold up to a much more difficult modern standard. They often say that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but this old dog could adapt to just about anything. B-Boy had been on a hiatus from the game ever since his 116, but when the month of April came around, he decided to return again to take the record back. Only 3 days since coming back to streaming attempts, he finally got a run again that successfully got Ramel Cycle. There was also an improvement to the honey skip setup, found by How to Cantaloupe, that is still the current setup used by most people on the day I posted this video. All you do is stand in the correct spot, hover for a short period of time, and then buffer a fully horizontal sidestep to the left. It turns out that this method is extremely lenient. This is also when doing a blooperless race in Rico Harbor episode 2 was starting to become standard. It had been known for years that this could be theoretically faster, but no one had good enough movement until 2016 for it to really save time. Oh, and by the way, this run was a new record.
Yes! Yes! Dude, it took 3 days. How did this happen already?
It's always exciting to watch Nindide play Any Percent when he gets a run going because of the strats that he goes for. It can make it more difficult to finish runs, but when he's nailing all the tricks, it can result in some seriously impressive records. Dide knew that he had the potential to get the record because his previous PB lost a ton of time to luck in EYG, but when a run came around that had good purple bill luck, he knew he had to clutch it out. So clearly, Bouncy Boy was getting a great deal of competition again, and he had to do something about it. After messing up the GPS setup and getting a bad pattern on Pianta Village episode 1, this run seemed like it was curtains, but something drove B-Boy to persevere. From what I've noticed, Bouncy is one of the most momentum-based SMS runners ever. When he's playing well, he will generally continue to keep playing out of his mind. When he's playing poorly, he'll tend to make some questionable mistakes.
Oh my goodness!
In this run, however, he wasn't even fazed by his poor early game.
Hey, did it.
But he wasn't quite satisfied with his time.
As I said early in the run, this run sucks. I'll get 115, hopefully tomorrow. Oh, actually, I can't play for the next few days.
People were certain that 115 would spell the death of SMS Any Percent, if only because the amount of luck throughout the run made so much of an impact on top players. Conveniently, in the summer of 2016, Zelpiku Kirby found some really useful stuff in regards to early Yoshi Go Round. Previously, this trick was always performed in episode 2 because there's a door you can clip through, and additionally, bullet bills that can be used as platforms. But what if I told you that there is an alternate way to perform this skip in episode 3 that doesn't rely heavily on luck and is faster than the usual method? Well, Zelpiku found just such thing. He discovered that if you create platforms at just the right height and sidestep under them with Yoshi, you can clip through objects. In episode 3, you have to utilize the tiny Soren stews. Here's how it works. You eat a durian with Yoshi and throw a papaya through the doorway for later use. Then lure 2 of the Soren stews over to the side of this doorway and use one of them to clip into the wall. The reason you can't simply walk through the doorway is that it contains the loading zone to the park. Once you've clipped into the unloaded park, you lure the other stew towards the invisible wall. Spray the stew with a properly aligned angle eat the papaya that you threw into the doorway, and ride the platform to the Yoshi go round. This method was super useful not only in saving a bit of time, but also removing the stupid amount of luck that went into the previous method. Using pin of 3 EYG, which was coined 3YG, B-Boy managed to get a new record with the run that had an extremely slow time out of early Bianco.
Unbelievable, dude. 3:14 segment. This run's great. Jesus. Hey! 1:16:08. This run had a 17-minute Bianco 5. Are you fucking kidding me?
SMS was on the cusp of seeing a 1:15 completion, and Bouncy Boy, Tobo, and Ndide all had the potential to get it. The strats that top players could go for to save 1 to 2 seconds were getting pretty ridiculous. I would like to reiterate just how crazy Ndide is. He will truly go for whatever it takes to be a little more optimal than everyone else. And this is the turning point at which all of that patience with going for the best strats really started to pay off for him. The final strat that I would like to formally talk about in this video is the fastest cycle that humans can go for in Noki Bay episode 6, the Shell Secret. Referred to as Ham Cycle, it's possible to go fast enough in the first section to actually reach the side of the green peg on the spinning block, as seen in this IL from 2015 by Pyroshade. No one would even think of going for this strat outside of IL attempts. Except for Ndide. On July 23rd, Ndide got the first ever 115 in Sunshine Any percent. But in his eyes, there was still much more potential for improvement. Considering that 3YG was a thing, and luck was no longer an issue in Pennant Park, he was only scraping the surface of how low he could push his time. After achieving 115.54, Ndide was already saying that 114 was possible. People laughed at him, but little did everyone know that Ndide was about to prove him wrong.
Holy shart, dude! Is this 114 pace? Oh my god, dude!
It was pure insanity what Ndide accomplished in 2016. As it turns out, it was a brilliant strategy to go ahead and learn the hardest strats immediately, as it clearly helped him in the long run. Before Ndide started rising up, no one could have seen it coming that a 114 would possibly happen at all, let alone in 2016. Some of these strategies are very all or nothing, and it can be hard to justify going for them if it only saves like 1 second. But a single second saved on multiple levels can add up very quickly. Nindide seemed to be slowing down the momentum a bit now, as a few months passed in 2017 with no new PBs. Other top runners had to simply work towards closing the gap between their times and the daunting 1:14.58. A Japanese runner named Leviton was improving surprisingly fast in the spring of 2017. Leviton had been around as early as 2013, but he took a break from the game for about a year and came back even stronger. Leviton became good enough to even contend for the world record, which he proved in his 80% speedrun in 1:15.05 without Rommel cycle. The nuttiest thing about Leviton is that he went for relatively basic strats for a top player, but was extremely consistent at pulling them off in a single run. He could achieve times that were within 2 minutes of his sum of best segments, which is pretty much unheard of for any other runner. Well, on May 9th, Leviton got a 1:14.55 and finally took the record. Kind of. Not officially. Unfortunately, he completed his run offline, and he also had a recording issue that prevented him from having video proof. As a result, his time was not allowed on the official leaderboard, as world record times must have proper video proof, no exceptions. All we got was a screenshot of his splits on Twitter, and a glint of hope that someone could finally best Nindide's long-standing dominance. People were a little annoyed, knowing that there was a time that was unofficially better than the current record displayed on speedrun.com. Later in the month, however, that would no longer be an issue.
Yes! Yes! I did it.
Nindide had actually been grinding 80% for the entirety of 2017 up to this point, and finally, after 5 months, improved his PB again. That is a true testament to how insane the 1:14.58 was. But funnily enough, this record actually had a death in Bianco 6, which to me only further shows how insane Dide's skill level is.
Oh my fucking god.
And as of today, that's where the 80% record stands, at 1:14.40. SMS speedrunning went through a variety of eras in which different runners reigned supreme, and I'm certain that as time goes on, there will be a new generation of Sunshine runners that takes the game to an even crazier level. The potential of how high the skill ceiling can get is even higher than people might realize, as the movement in this game lends itself to a seemingly endless amount of possibilities. Mario Sunshine is currently the 3rd most popular game on speedrun.com, only behind Mario 64 and the Ocarina of Time. SMS could have easily fallen under the radar if not for its amazing community involvement over the years, and I've gotta say, it is truly awesome that it's received the attention that it has. Despite once being known as the black sheep of the 3D Mario series, Super Mario Sunshine has been held in much higher regards in recent years as being a true classic of the GameCube era. This has been Average Trey. Peace.